The universe is a boomerang, and whatever we throw out is going to come back. And if you're sitting there worried about everything, then everything's going to become a reality. Like it's just a fact. I love my parents, but they're the tag team champions of bad news and negativity. They cannot wait to get into the ring and unload bad news on you. They just that they live for it.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Mental Purpose Podcast. I'm your host, Ian Lobos. Today, this is a really fun show. I mean, real fun. And I know I tell you that they're all exciting, and guess what? They are all exciting. This one's really fun and exciting. And honestly, it's got a ton of stuff that I did not expect it to have. So my guest today is Shuli Egar. And for those of you that know that name or that rings a bell, Shuli was on the Howard Stern Show for 15 years. I am a super fan of the Howard Stern Show, and that is not why I brought Shuli on. That's not why I had him here. I had Shuli here because I wanted to understand who he was, how he built who he became, how he got on the Howard Stern Show, and really what I was wondering, like since he left the show in 2020, why did he leave the show? What was his motivation? How did he leave it? Was he pressured? Was he this? I wanted to find that out. Well, guess what? On this episode, we find out a lot more than just that. And we're actually going to be doing another episode with Shuli as well to dig into some of the Howard stuff and to dig into the move and his comedy career blowing up and like get really deep. So before we start, let's get some of the biz out of the way. You know what I'm going to tell you. If you haven't joined the Men on Purpose community yet, you need to get in there. There's free resources, free coaching, free exercises, a shit ton of other people that are just like you. They're enjoying life. They're trying to elevate. They're trying to evolve themselves to be the best, most authentic version of them so they don't live with any regrets. Just join it. It's free. The podcast is your other free resource. There's freaking gold here. So every time you listen to the podcast, my ask is that you take notes or you just write down one thing that you love from something the guest said or something that I said. And that's it. And then compile those and see what you learned over a month or a couple month period. And we've got all kinds of amazing stuff coming up. Amazing stuff coming up. Just you want to anything you need, go to mentalpurposepodcast.com. You can find out everything about our podcast guests. Go to ianlobos.com. My name, you can go and find out everything about me, our coaching business, the Mental Purpose Coaching, our mastermind, which our mastermind kicks off every 3 weeks. It's a paid, deep dive, 100-day group where we're taking you through our exercises personally. We're coaching you on like as a group every week, twice a week. It's freaking awesome. So here's what Shuli and I are going to talk about today. And then you can make your decision as to whether you want to stay. I would if I were you. It was fucking impressive. I got 2 pages of notes. You don't believe me? Here you go. 2 pages of notes. It was really awesome. And what an incredible guy. So you saw the name of this episode is Your Ego is Not Your Amigo. Shuli came up with that. Somebody else actually really came up with that. I think it was Kanye West. Doesn't matter. We'll say Shuli came up with it. And I named it that because we talk a lot about your ego and getting the fuck out of your way. Simple put, right? Getting the fuck out of your way. How to, when to, why to, where do I go to get help? Literally, that's what we're talking about on this episode. And we do that through Shuli's early days in Israel, to his move to LA with his parents, to the move to Vegas, and like how he has developed not only his career, how he's developed himself. And I'm telling you right now, he drops some gold in this episode about manifestation, about thinking and being positive, the universe being a boomerang, reality is in the realness, and taking pressure off of your clients, right? He learned in comedy, we're putting too much pressure on my client. So for any of you in business, like you're going to learn a lot about business stuff by listening to how Shuli honed his comedy skills and his talent to take the pressure off the audience. And we talked about not letting worry be your reality. We talked about the hope principle, which is hope is for suckers and belief is for winners. How he doesn't get dragged down by low energy, low level people, the power of gratitude, the power of manifestation, letting go of the outcome, literally. And we also talked about what he does at night, his morning and evening routine from Mel Robbins' book, The 5-Second Rule. All that shit and more. And this is a long episode. And yeah, we're going to keep going We're going to do another episode with Shuli to talk about the Howard years and to talk about him leaving. And what an incredible guy. I was a fan of Shuli's before. Now talking to him and getting to know him for an hour and a half, um, I'm a real fan of the man, of the human. He's a really great guy, and and I really appreciated this episode, and I appreciated him being on. You're gonna love it. So here we go. This is Shuli Egar. Enjoy. All right, Shuli. It's a pleasure and an honor, man. I've been a fan of yours for a very long time. Not fanboyed out and weird. I just really appreciate your hustle, your struggle, your adaptability, your growth. And today, like the reason why I've been chasing you down for a year is because I really want to celebrate the husband and father and guy you are for your family. And I want people to hear that for those of you that know that for those people that are listening that know your name, like you came from the biggest, baddest radio show that there ever will be and has been. And I was not one of those fans when you left. I wasn't one of those fans who were like, "Oh fuck, surely he can't hang." I was the guy that went, I'm really curious as to why he did that. And I said to my wife, we were in the car, and I'm like, "Oh my God, Shuli left." And she was like, well, where'd he go? And I was like, "He went to Alabama." And this is like, it's like you're a part of my family. You know what I mean? Like, you know, all the people on the show.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Why do you think he did that?" And I said, "Because I think he was being tortured, and I think he needed to just get out and be there for his family and be present and kind of like live his own life." So we're gonna get into that today. I really want for the audience that doesn't know you, I want to get into your background and how you have evolved into the guy you are today.
Yeah, man. Well,
Of
first of
course,
all, thanks for having me, and thanks for your patience. We tried this a while back, and things went a little haywire on my
of
end. So
course.
I appreciate you hanging, and allowing me to be a guest on your show. Thank you for the kind words. About time somebody appreciated me as a
Now I
husband
don't know
and
the inner
father.
circle. I know the outer
Sorry.
circle.
No, I'm kidding. No, I mean, listen. So my story begins in Israel. My parents, they had three boys. I was the youngest of three. I was named after my uncle, my dad's brother, who was killed in the Six Day War, Shaul. And after I was born, my mom decided that her boys were not going to go into the military. That this, she had a hunch, this craziness over there wouldn't die down anytime soon. And she's like, I don't want to risk or sacrifice my family for this
Yeah.
bullshit. And they packed up three boys. They had 20, 30 grand to their name. And they moved, they flew us all. We all went to LA, where they knew, I think, two or three people. They barely knew the language. They had nothing lined up. They just, and they left, you know, friends, family, calling them
Really?
deserters, traitors. How come my kids are good enough to go to the military, but yours aren't? And my mom was just like, hey, it's not something they're gonna do. It's not something I want my kids to do, and we're in a position where we can give them an opportunity for something else, and they did it, and
Yeah.
they did that for us. And also when we got here, it wasn't like, oh, we're here now, so everybody make sure that you still eat kosher, and everybody makes like once we got to the states, they were like, we're here now. My dad's like, you
No
want a
shit.
cheeseburger? I'll make you a cheeseburger on the grill. You want? Yeah, like, and my parents kept kosher. They weren't super religious. They gave us the option, but they also assimilated to where we were at. It wasn't about what we are bringing to the table from where we're coming from. It's about where we're at now and how do we make this work. And shit, man, we lived in the San Fernando Valley. My dad owned a couple car washes out in Anaheim, which
Yeah,
is
I was gonna say
about
it's
a
long.
2 hour drive. Yeah, and I watched this man go to work 7 days a week and bust his ass
Yeah.
for us, right? And so you fast forward to, you know, years later, I'm out of high school. I'm living with some friends in Arizona, My parents had just moved to Vegas. I wanted to avoid Vegas. I grew up in Vegas because my mom loved gambling, and I used to roll with her since the age of 7 to Vegas, and she would gamble and I'd play video games at Circus
Nice.
Circus, and we were a duo, man. We were 7 years old. She'd hand me $100. I'd go downstairs. I'd grab a cab. I'd have the cab take me to Circus Circus. I'd go play video games. I'd make sure I left with enough money for a cab ride back, plus tip. You want
Yeah.
to talk about a class act as a 7-year-old tipping? And would come back to the hotel when
Nice.
the money was done, and we did that every other weekend, because obviously my mom at the time was an addicted gambler.
Yeah.
We didn't see the signs, but I was addicted to video games, so I I
Right.
was
You
her
guys roll
road dog,
together.
Yeah, and that's when I said, I want to try stand up when I was living out there. I tried everything else. My last job, I was a
At
wheelchair
the airport.
pusher uh, at the air at
Yeah.
the airport in Vegas, which sounds like a great thing to throw in your transcripts if you're going to college. But the reality of it is, it's a terrible job because the handicapped people you help, you can count on one hand. The fat people you push
Yeah.
that don't want to walk, that's all your clientele. And if they paid by the pound, that'd be great. But they don't. They they throw you 50 cents for
Right.
being a human engine to 400 pounds on
Up a
carpet.
hill.
So, I yeah, and a lot of those jobs were about like it was just taking something that wasn't gonna take anything from me. I could
Yeah.
do the job with my eyes closed, right, and still kind of search what I'm meant to do, what I feel that I should be doing, and it was always comedy, comedy in general. I've always been a fan of it growing up. My parents are two of the funniest people I've ever met, and they're the last to know it. Comedies is always been
Yeah.
what I've gravitated to.
How did
So
you how did
when
you
I was out
like
there,
the first time you
yeah,
went up
go
on
ahead.
stage? I'm always curious and I always want to ask comedians this. Like when you bomb horribly, you got to fail through so much shit to grow. And when you get up there and you
Right, to
bomb,
succeed, yeah,
what is that like how do you then get up again? Cuz that is maybe one of the most uncomfortable things to do besides being nude in public. Like you are raw up there. Everybody's watching you, judging you, you know that. How do you get back up there when you failed
yeah.
miserably?
It's well, I can tell you the first time I ever did stand up was one of the worst experiences of my life. One of the scariest. It went horribly, horribly bad. I remember trying to turn on the red light with my mind like a Jedi because I wanted to get off the stage so bad, and it just seemed like it took forever
Yeah.
for that light to come on, and and I left the club and I was like, well, that was the most terrible thing I've ever been through. And then after about 10 minutes, I'm like, shit, I bet if I changed this word or I moved this to here, maybe that would get a laugh. And instead of like running away from it, there's and I think that's where you discover if you can do this or not is those bombs will weed out anyone
Yeah.
who's a poser. That feeling of being alone up there, and look, it's not like your first time going on stage. You're in
Right.
front of 10,000 people or 1,000 people. It's worse. You're in
Yeah.
front of 7 people, right?
Right.
5 of them are comics, so it's like the I had a comic tell me once, you want comics in the back of the room to laugh at you while you're on stage? Light yourself on fire. They're not the they're not the most
Exactly. Yeah.
supportive bunch, right? So it's terrible, and it doesn't just end after your first night. Like there's no other job that you have to learn on the spot in front of people.
I mean, how else
There's
are you
no other
supposed to do
skill.
it?
If you want to learn, yeah, like if you want to learn piano, you go, okay, go up on stage for
Right.
five
Right.
minutes and do your best
Right.
in front of these people. And you're like, well, how the hell am I supposed to learn like that?
Trial by
That's the
fire.
only way we can learn. There's no one to blame but ourselves. Um, but at the same time, we're all, all of us that do it, we're all
Yeah.
starving for attention. We got up there for a reason because deep down inside we have no problem with everyone in the room looking at us and listening to us, but it's still a craft. It's still an art form that you have to figure out. The way you write year 1 is nothing compared to the
Right.
way you write year 2 or year 3 or year 4. And it's one of the few businesses that you do this 30, 40 years and you still learn something doing it. And those bad shows are usually the ones you learn the
So if
most in,
there's
not the good
when
ones.
you have a bad show, because that shit doesn't end from your in your first year. When you have a bad set, bad show, the energy's off. Is that what separates the greats from the averages? Like I always wonder, I'm like, wow, that comedian's pretty good. He's pretty fucking funny. Why isn't he more popular? Is it is it a guy that just
Hmm.
refuses? It's kind of like most people in life, they refuse to work on their craft.
I mean, there's the type of comics that use the same 20, 30, 45 minutes. They
Right.
don't write anything new. They're old school. That's how comedy was way back in the day. Then there's the guys that are just machines that just write and write and write, and they have new hours every 3 months or 6 months, and but the guys who don't write eventually
Right.
don't do this. That that's it. There's no, especially New York. New York is a place, a comedy mecca, which will only respect you if you do the work. It's not about what you look like, what show you're on, what you drive, what iPhone you got. This is about funny. Are you funny and are you writing? Because if you're funny the first time and we see you 3 other times and you're doing the same shit over and over and over again, they hit the chess
Interesting.
clock on you. You're out. Done. So it's you're and the bombing, I bombed for like a year straight in Vegas, to the point where, because I was
What
playing
pushes you
casino
back there
crowds, I
though?
wasn't playing
What like
comedy club
that
crowds.
night and you're leaving your house, you just had a bad day and you're like, fuck my life, man. I cannot get back on that stage and get booed again. Like, how do you keep going through that?
Because in my mind, I'm like, if I can get good enough to do this for a living, how cool would
Agreed.
this job be to
Agreed.
have for a living, right? Like, I get to work with my friends. I get to put smiles on people's faces and make them laugh. I was a blackjack and roulette dealer for a while too. And you talk about the opposite of putting smiles on people's faces. You break down a 7 card 21 on a guy and you watch his
Right.
whole life crumble. And it's like,
Yeah.
and I hated that. I hated that feeling. I hated being that guy that was like, sorry, and take your money. And it's like, so, the thing that say, like, I would have a rule. I bombed so much that I would get into my shit. I'd get into my head for 10 minutes. I gave myself 10 minute window after a bomb. You say the worst stuff you want about yourself. You suck. Don't ever do this again. But after 10 minutes, let it go. Let it all go, and let's focus on tomorrow. Because while Vegas wasn't a place for a comedy scene, because you have so many options in Vegas to do so many other things, a comedy scene's not going to survive in Vegas. When people can go to a hotel and see someone that's been on
Right.
Comedy Central or something, and the hotels have no interest in
Yeah.
developing local talent, so you're kind of stuck there. And I ran 4 or 5 open mics in Vegas with my buddies, and all of these were free shows at bars where literally you have to come up with material good enough to get someone to stop looking and playing on a poker machine and
Yeah.
pay attention
Which
to you.
not easy.
And you
No.
just you don't have it. Nobody has material to compete with gambling
Yeah,
addiction.
totally.
You understand? No, a guy who just lost his mortgage payment doesn't want to hear about the
Right.
new gym
Right.
I joined. You understand? They're like, "Shut the fuck up. My life is crumbling." And you're sitting here talking about peanuts on an
Yeah.
airplane, you
Yeah.
hack. So so it was like the worst place
And
to
the
learn
best at
how
the
to
same
do
time, right?
comedy. But my
Yeah.
and that's exactly what I was going to say. If you could get 9 people that are sitting there uncomfortable in a room that holds 80 to 100 to laugh
Yeah.
together in unison. And I got news for you. 100 people in that
Yeah.
room is a cakewalk. People that paid, that are
Yeah.
invested to laugh, that is a big difference because Vegas is all about comps. And I could walk out on stage and I know exactly who was comped. It's this
Hmm.
fucking guy. This pose, arms folded,
Yeah.
dance for me. Right? Now it's your time to go. Why? Because you ordered a steak and lobster at the coffee
Right.
shop for $9. Now I'm your monkey. Now I got to. So it was this constant battle of like, I want to get good enough to make these people laugh, but then the other side of me was like, well,
Right.
fuck these people. They don't care about you. They're not here to see you. They're just here because somebody told them they
Right.
could go here for free. So I would give myself this 10-minute rule, and then a buddy of mine said to me, "You ever hear this album called The Day the Laughter Died?" I said, "No, what is it?" He goes, "It's an album
Yeah.
Andrew Dice Clay did." Now, this is after Dice was
Like
the first
Dice
mega
Mania.
rock
Yeah.
star comic. Dice Mania sold out Madison Square Garden back to back nights, was the first comedian to ever do it, was in the Guinness
Yeah.
Book of World's Record for it, right? He does this album. Listen to this concept. He goes to Dangerfields in New York at like 1 a.m. on a Monday or a Tuesday, unannounced, unpromoted, with Rick Rubin, producer extraordinaire, and they proceed to record an hour and a half of Dice bombing in front of people that had no idea Dice was there. He's trying out new material. He's trying out shit that isn't even material. He's what we call
Yeah.
leaning into it. I've never heard anything like it. There was no fear. There was no hesitation. And he made it funny. He made it fun. And that to me changed everything. I was like, oh, I'm afraid of this thing, but like I remember the next day, the next time I did a show, I come out on stage. And I would always come out and it'd be like 7 people, 12 people, 14 people. 20 was like sold out in my mind. It was like crazy if I saw 20 people there. And I would always come out and never address it. I would just go right into my material. And after hearing that album, I remember coming out on stage the first time and it was 6 people there. And I'm like, hey, how's everybody doing? And I just kind of looked left and looked right and got quiet. And already they're chuckling. I haven't even said anything. But I'm acknowledging the fact that this
Yeah.
room is fucking empty. And I look at them and I go, hey, do you guys just want to do this in my car? I go, I can smoke weed there.
Yeah.
There's plenty of room. I said, and and then I would come up with more stuff based on, like I would tell people, hey man, I don't care that there's 7 people here. You don't need the big crowds. You need the right crowds. And they would all start clapping. I go, yeah, that's what I'm going to tell myself crying on the way home. What the fuck
Right.
happened to my career? What am I doing here? And it took all the pressure off of them. They're like, oh, this guy sees what we see. There's nobody here. And he's making that funny. And he's not going into, so how many people work out in the gym? Yeah, we'll pretend there's more than 4 people here. Who works out? It's like that Dice album just showed me the real comedy is
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
realness. And so don't avoid it. Don't be afraid of it. Lean into that shit. Make it your own. And that changed everything for me. I was never afraid of bombing after that. I know it's something
Yeah.
that has to
That
happen.
reminds me of something that Jim Carrey said, which was his everything changed for him the moment that he realized his job wasn't to make people laugh, it was to free people from concern. And so what you said
Yeah.
was so great because there's not a lot of ego in that shit. What you just said, like you like the comedy is in the realness of the room. You're not coming out and doing a set. I had a guy on this. I've been to this guy's. He's a investor guy, and I've been to his shows, and he does this little act about he
Right.
does his past and he does this and I lost this much money and all this bullshit. And I said, hey man, why don't you come on the podcast? Like you got some cool shit going on. He literally came on the podcast and did the exact same set. And I stopped it. I'm like, hey, this isn't gonna work. I need you real here. I need you here. The
Yeah.
audience is gonna pick up on that shit. So I love what you said about that because I mean, a couple things.
The realest
No,
stuff is
but
always the funniest
that's
stuff
what people love. That's
with
why the
stand up.
Kardashians are so popular. It's not their asses. It's that they're
Right.
fucking it. Well, yeah,
Right.
it's part of it.
Well, that's
I
part
don't
of
know
it.
how
I mean, let's
real
be
they
honest.
actually are though. Let's not say the Kardashians. Let's just say like reality shows. Like I don't know what reality shows are real at this point. Reality shows in general.
But listen, like I smoke weed, right? And I talk about weed in my act, but I had to figure out a way to talk because when I first started talking about weed, it was from a point of like, yeah, I
Yeah.
smoke weed. What's up? What's up? You got a problem with that? Are you the man? You gonna shut me down? And instead, I had to figure out a way to make the story I was telling funny to people who didn't smoke pot. So how do you do that, right? You drop the ego. It's not about whether you're for it or against it. What the bit becomes about is the decision making abilities, the dumbness of being high. Make you the idiot. Don't attack them. Let them all laugh at you. And guess what? People who've been high will relate. People who have never smoked a day in their life can still relate to
Yeah.
you being
Fair.
an idiot because everybody's
Fair.
had idiot moments. So that was a thing that I had to figure out. And again, it's failing is the only way to figure it out. I'll never forget we had like a younger crowd one night at this hotel in Vegas where I worked regularly. And every night it was just old people, old people. And I'm doing bits about sex and drugs, and it's very early
Yeah.
on, so it's all
You're exploring.
dirty and it's all, I mean, it's all
Yeah.
you got when you're starting out. It's
Right.
just fart and cum jokes. It's every open micer. It's their whole set list. And and I see like these guys with long hair waiting in line to go in, like younger dudes, and I'm like, my weed stuff's gonna crush tonight. I can finally do it. And I bombed harder that night in front of those people with that weed shit. It just you gotta be you. You gotta address what's going on, and you gotta make you the joke. You can't make you like you said. Ego is,
It's a killer.
you know, the it is,
Yep.
man. Kanye West, the guy is, your ego is
Yeah.
not your amigo. The best thing he's ever said. Makes the most sense ever. And once you drop that, you're untouchable. You really
That's
are.
going to be the name of this episode now. Your ego is not your amigo. I love it.
Your ego is. It's great. It's a great line. I remember these lines throughout the years.
Yeah.
Stuff my dad's told me that as I get older, so you talk about comedy, right? Being real. Like I used to stay up. Carson was like my first thing I was ever addicted to. I had to stay up to watch Carson. I was so fascinated by his show because even at a young age, before knowing anything about comedy, I knew when those
Yeah.
animals would come out, he was just
Yeah.
riffing off the top of his head with them. When those sketches he was doing started bombing, he
Yeah.
started goofing on the sketch in the
Yeah.
middle of the sketch. That comedy without a net,
It's attractive.
I love that. The organic, spontaneous nature of comedy is where I would sleep 365 7 days a week. I love that shit. And I would stay up late and there would be times where I hear my dad coming down the hall. So I would just close my eyes and I pretend to be asleep. My dad, my mom and dad met in the Israeli army. He's a tough guy, but he's never been an asshole. He's great sense of humor. So he'd walk over, he'd see my eyes closed, and he'd stand by my head for like 10, 15 seconds, not saying a word. But I got my
Yeah.
eyes peeked a little bit. I could see his torso, his stomach, and I'm laying there and I'm thinking, what the fuck is he doing? And then he says to me in Hebrew, not knowing if
Yeah.
I'm asleep or awake, but he has a hunch that I'm awake. And he says to me in Hebrew the following phrase: You can't scare a hooker with a dick.
He says that. Yeah.
And that's exactly what I would do. I would start laughing because my
Right,
dad's saying
right.
hooker and dick to me while I'm trying to go to sleep.
And
And
what are you,
that's how he
10
would
at this
bust me,
time?
you know? And
Yeah.
oh, yeah, 10, 9, like
Yeah.
he didn't give a shit. His sayings would catch me so off guard. The other one, my favorite one, we'd be sitting at the dinner table and I'd finish eating something and I'd take the napkin, I wipe my face, I ball it up, I shoot it for the trash can, and on my way up to pick it up because I missed, he would tell me in Hebrew, "A lazy man does everything twice." And I'd be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"What an asshole! He's so right.
So
He's
right.
so
Let me
right."
get let, let me get
So
deep with
those
you for a
sayings,
second.
man. Yeah.
I was a part of my dad's business. My dad's a shipping company, and I was a part of that after college for like 8 years because I thought I just wanted to work in the business, but really what I wanted was to prove to my dad that I was worthy and that I could hang with him, right? Obviously. So
Sure.
I want to get a little deep for a second because there's people listening to this. They go, I don't know why I do what I do, and I'm still trying to figure that out. So,
Hmm.
is the comedy thing really because of your dad and the relationship you have with him? Like, is that what attracted you to it, or are there other reasons, and maybe that's one of them?
I think
Yeah,
it's my whole family. I remember being in Israel like 3 years old, um, being with my grandparents, my mom's mother and father. And I remember my grandfather driving my grandmother nuts at the breakfast table, just making sounds. Like I learned how to make those sounds because I watched him
yeah.
fuck with her. Like she would just walk around and get breakfast ready, and he would just sit there and he'd just go, and she would turn around and she'd go, "Vili, must speak," and she'd scream out, and then he'd look at me and wink, and I would lose my shit. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. And between them, my aunts, my parents, when they didn't realize when my parents fought, it was hilarious. It was the funniest thing ever. The shit my mom would say to my dad, and they would be fine later, but it was like I tell it on stage, like there wasn't, you know, people who have parents that just speak English, I feel bad for you because all you get is your dad being called an asshole, your mom being called a bitch, your woo boo boo boo. Big deal. We had my mom would create scenarios and short stories to insult my dad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like she once told him in Hebrew, go to the freezer, grab a popsicle, shove it up your ass, eat it, and then tell me what it tastes like. She once told him that in a fight.
That
And
has to
I
sound
remember thinking,
hilarious in Hebrew.
oh yeah, לך תביא ארטיק, דחוף פתחת, טעים את זה ותגיד לי איך זה טעים, huh? And I'd be sitting there going, you don't even need the
Yeah,
last three things on this list. Like once an adult's
you're
putting a
done. You're
dessert
done.
up
You're
his
toast.
ass,
Yeah.
that's game. You've won. It's a victory.
So you
You
learned your
know,
structure, man. Like
but like
you're understanding structure at that point of
yeah,
your jokes. Yeah.
rhythm,
Yeah.
timing, structure.
I mean, isn't
Absolutely,
this game
absolutely.
not just comedy, but really any game? Isn't it about owning your shit? I mean, dude, I didn't know that about Dice. I know that album
Mm.
from Dice. I'm a huge Dice fan. I did not know that he played that to like an empty theater, an empty crowd.
It wasn't even it just wasn't
Right.
his crowd. They were there. They're being barked off the street. People go, "Hey, you want to
Yeah.
go see Jerry Seinfeld?" They just
Right.
make up comedians' names to get these tickets in these tourists' hands, and they go, "Yeah, you can bring a 9-year-old kid with
Here
you.
comes
Yeah,
Dice.
absolutely." They don't give a shit, and so here comes Dice, completely unannounced, and just goes up there and starts doing such vile stuff that's funny for the wrong reasons. It's not funny because it's polished and and
Right.
and mastered and a great bit that you're sitting there at the end of it going, "Wow, I never really thought of that." It wasn't coming from a
Right.
Bill Hicks point of view. This was just, you know, uh I mean, I'm trying to think of some of the, like he just has this section called the notes, where just periodically he'll go to the audience and go, "All right, I'll just read from my notes," and the notes are just
Right.
non sequiturs that make no sense whatsoever. And he goes, all right, I'll just go to the notes. He goes, I want somebody to do the black man
I remember that
handshake
one.
on my prick.
And that's it.
That's the end of the note. Yeah, and it's like, and people are
Huh?
just like, huh? He goes, all right, you don't like that one? I'll go to the next one. And he's in charge the
Yeah.
whole time.
Yeah.
He's in control. It was just, it was a master class in how to take something where normal people would go, I'm never
Right.
doing this again. You know, the first time I ever worked with him, he essentially made me bomb.
How did? Oh,
He
okay. Yeah.
tested
Yeah. I was
me.
gonna say.
He says, I meet him. So I've been
Yeah.
Dice is one of my comedy heroes, obviously. And I get the call that I'm opening for him in Toronto and Montreal. And I start plugging this thing like 4 months out. Like, I'm so excited. He doesn't need my plugs. He's going to sell out anyways, but I'm just pumped to do this. So we get to Toronto, Massey Hall, sold out, 2,000 people, I don't know how many. 5 minutes before the show, they go, Dice wants to see you. So I go back to his dressing room. Now I know Jim Norton,
Yeah.
I know Jim Florentine, guys who have opened for him. I know he likes to have fun backstage. I know he likes to fuck with people, which again is why he's one of my comedy heroes, because I've worked with a ton of big names that are
Right.
fucking miserable back there. They don't. At least I know, as goofy and as dumb as this guy is being, at least
Yeah.
I know he's still having fun doing this. That's all. That's all I ever wanted, was a job that I could have fun doing. So he comes up to me. I go to his dressing room. He goes, "How you doing? What's your name?" I go, "Shuli." He goes, "Shushel, listen. What are you going to talk about out there?" And I go, "I don't know, drugs and sex and stuff." And he goes, "I got a better idea. I want you to go out there. First thing you're going to do is you're going to go, 'Who here's from Canada?'" Right? We're in Toronto. We're
Right.
in fucking Toronto. Everybody is from Canada. Then he goes, "Then I want you to be like, 'Who loves hockey?' Then I want you to go, 'Who's here to see Dice?' And when they're fucking going nuts, when they're crazy, that's when I want you to talk about the song I'm coming out to." And I
What are you, his
go,
MC?
"I'm sorry, what?" I'm hosting. I'm hosting. I'm
Got
featuring, and I'm bringing
got
him
it.
up. It's just a 2-man show. So I go, "I'm sorry, the song?" He goes, "Yeah, the song I'm coming out to. My kids did the song. One's 14, plays drums. The other one's 11, guitar. It's a phenomenal song. Talk about that." And I'm like, "For how long?" And he goes, "I don't know. Do like 3 minutes." So now I've plugged a show in Toronto for 4 months, where I'm now supposed to do 3 minutes on a
Yeah. That
fucking
his sons
song.
did.
So now I'm sitting here, and now the math in my head starts happening, right? The comic math, which is, this fucking guy wants me to bomb. There's 1,500 people out there. I don't want to bomb in front of 1,500 people. And then the other side of me,
Yeah.
the no ego side, shows up and says, "Hey man, check it out. Number one, it's his show, not yours. Number two, the people are here to see him, not you. And number three, most important, you get paid the same whether you bomb or you kill. So what do you care? This guy wants to have fun. He wants to test you. He wants to see if you're capable of doing this." And that's when, the fire got lit. And I'm like, "Oh, you want to
I'll
see a
fucking
bomb?
bomb big
I'll
time.
fucking bomb, dude." And I go out there and I'm like, "Who here's from Canada?" And of course, everybody's from Canada. And I go, "God, who loves hockey?" And everybody's like, "Yeah, all right, these are pretty fucking basic." And then I go, "Who's here to see Dice?" They're like, "Yeah, that too." And then I go, "Well, let me tell you about the song he's coming out to." And that's when I realized, when that sentence came out of my mouth, I realized I'm explaining a song to people that
No
they have not
context.
heard, and that I
Right. I was
and that
gonna
I
ask you.
have
Did you
not
hear the
heard.
song at least?
No, no. So now I'm just as confused as they are, and
Right.
I'm driving this bit. I'm driving us home in this bit. And I'm going, "Yeah." I go, "Let me tell you about the song he's coming out to." And just hush. And then I just hear one voice in the balcony go, "Get the fuck off the stage!" like that. And I look on the clock on the theater on the floor, the stage of the theater, and it's at 42
Ooh,
seconds. I'll
total.
never forget that.
Oh shit.
Total since I got up there. Because one thing when you're bombing on stage, you start
Right.
going into super
Panic
fast mode,
mode.
right? Really early on, you're like, I got 10 minutes of material here. And then you go up and and you've blown through
Yeah.
it all in 2 minutes. And now you're up there for 8 minutes going, so what else, man? What else? Where are you guys from
Right.
here? You know,
Right.
you're drowning. You're trying to grab any body
Right.
part and pull it down with you. So I start in with, I go, yeah, I had no jokes. I had nothing. I go, the drummer's 14. Like that was a punchline. It went nowhere. It was just horrible. And I'm up there dying. And I look at the clock and it's at like 2 minutes and 54, second. And I'm going, all right. I said, I'm out of here. I can finish up. Because one thing you don't want to do as a comic, whether you're bombing or killing or
Bail, yeah.
anything, is bail early. You do your time. So I said, guys, it's been a pleasure. Enjoy Dice. Thank you so much. Have a good night. And I walk off stage, and he's standing on the side of the stage. He's got his glasses off. He's wiping tears out of his eyes. And he puts his glasses on. He looks at me. He goes, you had them. You could have gone longer. They were in the palm of your hand. You had them. That was phenomenal. And I'm like, fuck, my legs are shaking, everything's shaking. And I go to the back and I watch him and he destroys. And then we have a bite to eat afterwards. And then the next night we're in Montreal. And I walk up to him and I go, what do you want me to do tonight? And he goes, I don't know, do 25, 30. And I go, about the song? And he's going, no, stupid, do your act. He goes, do your bits tonight. And I go up there, and I'm up there for like 10 minutes, and I look over to my right, and there's Dice, guy in the Guinness Book of World Record, biggest fucking comic rock star of all time, sitting on the side of the
Yeah.
stage watching my set.
Interested in
My
you.
entire set. Was so complimentary afterwards. He was telling me what a great writer he thought I was. I worked with him a few more times after that. We still talk. And it was like, and all that was, and I can't tell you how many comics I've told this story to that are like, I'd have told him to go fuck himself. That's what I would have done. You want me to bomb? I'd have told him fuck off. And it's like, that's why
Well, I was
you're
just gonna
still
say, so
where you're at.
think about that for the audience, not the comedy audience, for this audience. Like, I mean, what you're saying is so clear. Your ego could have made a decision for you in that moment, which was, I don't want to look bad because if I bomb here, what if nobody else comes to see my shows? What if my career's over? What if this? You could have what if the shit out of that instead of trusting one of the comedy legends of all time. Which, by the way, Dice has an eerie confidence about him when he walks up on stage. And for the audience who doesn't know Dice, like if you lived under a rock, if you were born in the 2000s, you don't know Dice. This guy is talking to Shuli probably with a cigarette in his mouth, leather gloves on, a denim shirt, yeah, a leather jacket, probably
Yep.
leather pants or mom jeans in some capacity.
He likes to wear those
Oh yeah,
workout pants.
the
You remember
parachute
those
pants
Zubaz? You know those? Yeah,
that are
yeah,
like American
yeah.
flags, like pure and simple white trash, New York City slash your neck of the woods now slash Oklahoma white trash, and this is a guy that can walk on stage in front of what, Madison Square Garden, 50,000 people, and have every one
Yeah.
of those people like needing hernia operations the next day because they're laughing so effing hard. And he doesn't give a shit.
Not only that,
Dude, I remember my dad bought me that album. When was his first one? And yeah, with Hickory
Dice
Dickory Dock and
rules,
all that.
right?
And my mom's like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah,
My dad's listening to it like, "What a genius! What a genius!"
yeah. By the way, he was a feature. He
Yeah.
wasn't even a headliner so his story was Rodney Dangerfield
Right.
put him on one
Right.
of
Right.
his
Right.
comedy specials. 'Cause Rodney used to do the young comedian special, and Dice was on it and killed so hard and crushed so hard that after that appearance, he was headlining. He didn't have the material for it at the time, but they made him a headliner. He went from playing Pip's
Right.
Comedy Club in Brooklyn in a basement to headlining all over the country, selling
Yeah.
out all over the country, and really had to learn
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
moment, on the fly,
Yeah.
become a headliner. Luckily, this guy has always been a showman. He's always, he grew up in the era of guys going on talk shows and singing
Yeah.
and telling stories and bringing something to the table. And so I mean, I watched this. I sat at the airport with him. The guy is
Right.
never not funny. He's never not, and he's standing there on the side of the stage in Montreal. I'll never forget. He was about to go up, and he goes, "It's like 2 minutes before he goes up. A minute." He looks at me. He goes, "What should I talk about when I go up there?" And it's not like he's making a joke or being funny. He's like legit. He's like, I just want to riff. Like he's not a guy that wants
Right.
to do the same shit over and over again. I watched him do 10 minutes on the microphone.
That's
He walks up there and he goes, a lot of comics will take the mic out and they'll move the stand. Some comics lower it. Some of them raise it. And
it's the way
everybody's
he it's his
laughing already.
cadence.
He,
Yeah.
it's the cadence, it's the rhythm, it's the sound. And he goes, some comics will go wireless. Some comics will use the cord. He goes, but no comic gives you the tilt. And then he just tilts the
And the
mic a little
crowd and
bit.
the crowd erupts.
And it's like,
Yeah.
they're up. They don't even know. There's a great bit in The Day the Laughter Died where he says the phrase, I'll call you back in an hour. And then he turns that into hour back. And then and he just keeps going back and forth and he goes, hour back. Get it? Boom. And he's just doing that. And at one point, like 3 minutes into this bit,
Yeah.
the whole room's laughing. And he looks at me and he goes, you see that? This is comedy. He goes, you're laughing and you don't
Right.
even know
It's
what you're
triggered. Like
laughing
there's
about.
something that got triggered. See, I love that shit, man. Like
Yeah.
that is where a human can truly connect with a human on some deeper level, and you're just in a room together in the present moment, and you're just vibing. That is truly special.
If you think about it, when that album came out, it was a day and age where every comedian that put out an album doubled and
Yeah.
tripled up the laughter,
Yeah.
audio wise. They sweetened everything to make
Yeah.
him sound like a killer. One of my favorite lines in The Day the Laughter Died is it's just dead silence. And and Dice just goes, great. You could hear the air conditioner. He goes, this whole album's ruined. It's like 40 minutes into bombing, and I love it that he picks the air conditioner as the reason why this album's ruined. And it's, people walking out like 50 minutes in. She goes, you're disgusting. He goes, took you 50 minutes to figure it out. It's like just comedy in its rawest, purest,
Dude, did you see
uncut
him?
form.
Did you watch Entourage and his season? Right.
Sure.
I think Doug Ellen's one of the genius writer, producer, direct, all the things that he did for that show, right? And so Dice, you hate Dice throughout that whole thing when he's holding up the Johnny Bananas contract and then when you go to the apartment and his son's freaking playing music and they're like, Dice, can you shut the fuck up? Can you shut him up for a second? Like, we got to do this. And Johnny is so insecure and Dice is like, and then they get the phone call and he goes, I fucking told you. We hold out. And they're like, and then dude, inside of me, I was like weeping. I was like emotional. I'm like, he fucking stuck to his guns. And the whole time you think he's being a prick, he's being cheap and egotistical and envious and greedy. Meanwhile, that was real Dice, just knowing himself
Yeah.
and knowing what was right. And Johnny was being insecure and mindset of scarcity. Like that was really Dice. They really painted what Dice would do in that situation. They did a great job.
It's something that I learned thanks to my wife, which is, the
Yeah.
universe is a
Yeah.
boomerang. and whatever we throw out is going to come back. And if you're sitting there worried about everything, then everything's going to become a reality. Like it's just a fact, you know. I love my parents, but they're the tag team champions of bad news and negativity. They cannot wait to get into the ring and
Yeah.
unload bad news on you. They just that they live for it. My wife, showed me a different path and started working with me on thinking positively and being positive. Now I can tell you, man, it's 100% fact that my life changed ever since I made that shift. And that's a big thing. The reason why I bring it up is because you have to be 110% committed. Like I have a saying, much like my dad, I have a saying with my kids. Whenever I hear them say hope, well, I hope this happens. I hope I get that present. And I look at them and I tell them all the time, hope is for suckers. Belief is everything. Fuck hope. Hope is a wish. Stop wishing. Belief. See it, believe it, achieve it. Done. When I used to listen to Howard, in my mind, I saw
Yeah.
myself working with these
You
people.
envisioned it.
I believed it. I believed one day I was going to get a shot. There was no doubt in my mind. You know how many comics and people I had telling me, why are you staying up at 3, 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, calling into a radio show? They'd go, do they pay you? And I go, no. Well, why would you do it? And it's like, I can't explain
Or your vision.
drive to
You
you.
get a
I can't
clarity, right?
explain hustle. Yeah, like this is something I believe can happen, but it's not going to land in your lap. That's the thing. When you tell people about just thinking positively and approaching life differently, like they go, oh, so I just think good
Yeah.
things and good things happen. Like it just lands from the sky. No, you got to do the work. You got to be a good person. But I guarantee you, I know for fact, when I worried about money, we were always broke. When I worried about getting someplace on time, I was always fucking late. It's just the worries will become a reality. So why not, instead of worrying, fill those moments with positive thoughts, with believing that you're crossing that finish line, that the universe is going to reward you with what you deserve, not what you want, not what you wish for, not what you hope you get. This is
Yeah.
what I deserve. I'm ready for my refund from the universe. I've made a lot of people happy. I've put a lot of smiles on people's faces.
Yeah,
Send that
yeah,
fucker
I
back
love
here.
that,
Let's
man.
go.
That's such a great thing to lead. Like this audience, they're into personal development, they're into growth, they're into understanding, expanding themselves, evolving themselves. That's a great point, which is like you're not, whatever you putting out there is what you're gonna get. My wife said to me the other
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Hope will keep
Yeah,
hope will keep you poor. Belief will get you out of that spot. Hope will keep you afraid to leave the house. Belief will
break
get
that
you out
down
of
though.
that
But
house.
here's what we're gonna have to do. I can
Yeah.
you can I get you on again? Because there's a lot more shit we got to talk about, and this like you gave a lot of gold just in the
Sure.
stuff you already talked about, and I don't want to run you more than an hour. So
Yeah, no
let
problem.
me
We can
ask
do it
you.
again.
Let me
Absolutely.
we'll wrap this one up, then we'll organize because I really would like to get into the Howard stuff. Not again like I told you, not because I'm a super
Yeah.
fan, it's because you're a you're a guy that has a different attitude than I think a lot of the people do on there. And I'd like to understand how you dealt, how you did your shit, like how you stayed. So, audience, that we're gonna do that on the next one. For all you Howard fans, I'm sorry to disappoint you. We're not gonna talk about Howard this time. Good news.
But good news, I didn't sign any NDA, so I
Right,
can
right.
talk about
So,
anything and everything. So stay tuned for the
but like
next
I
episode.
how when somebody starts to have a vision for what they think is possible, like you're
Yeah.
explaining it in a very clear way. Like you got to have a belief in yourself. But there is a massive amount. We talked about this a little earlier. There's a massive amount of self-doubt, of fear, of trauma, of bullshit that comes up from mom and dad, the shit that your teachers in school and society put on you, that like just as a fucking culture put on you. How do you navigate? How did you navigate through those things? Everybody's got their process. But like there's
Right.
a how do you stay on the phone and like just confidently know that's like I feel like this can happen. You're not actually looking for an outcome. You didn't pick up that phone to get on the Howard Stern show, like to be a regular, not just a caller.
Right.
You picked up the phone because you knew it could take you somewhere, right? So like a big difference between setting an outcome and like having this belief that something's possible. There's a big difference there.
Sure, absolutely. You know, there's so many people that you're going to meet in life that are they don't know you, maybe they do,
Sure.
but they're going to doubt you. They don't believe in what you're saying and what you're doing. Look, I, I lived a flaky life growing up. I was a flake. I didn't find
Yeah.
anything that I loved, so I wasn't passionate about anything, right? When I finally did stand up, when I got over the hump of being afraid to try it, and I tried it, and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. Now it was the issue of like, well, how do you get other people to believe in you, right? Like my parents are old school. We live in Vegas. Why aren't
Yeah.
you working in a casino? Why aren't you dealing? Why aren't you doing this? And I go, oh, I'm going to do stand up comedy. And they go, okay, great. So this guy who's been a flake
Right.
his entire life is now going into one
Yeah.
of the flakiest fucking
Yeah.
industries of all time. And they're like, we're going to have this kid with us
That
the rest of
makes
our
sense.
life. Like, he's never going to leave the
How did
house.
you
But at the
Sorry,
same
well,
time,
how did
yeah, go
you
ahead.
deal with the energy in some of those clubs? Like, I've heard you talk about it, like 3 a.m. at the Chuckle Hut, and you're like, "What the fuck is my?" You're eating a cheesesteak, and like, I can't get high enough to take myself out of this reality right now. I remember you saying that. So I don't remember when it was.
I've tried.
Yeah, and
I've tried.
how do you
But I,
maintain? Because it's not just your own ego and mind that's playing on you. It's the energy of the room. These like lousy loser people that are around you. How do you stay above that and not get dragged down? How did you?
it's well, it's perspective number one, and
Sure.
it didn't always work that way. I got dragged down a few times, but it's perspective. I always tell people, if you think your job sucks, go do plumbing for a year, because I did, and I hated my life every single day. I knew after having that job that I was never going to have that job ever again. That I was going to do everything in my power to make sure I never have to do plumbing again. It was one of the most physically demanding,
You
brutal
think people
jobs
need
I've
that
ever
kind of rite of
had.
passage or
Uh,
something that shows them the reality of what could be to really appreciate the other?
you need to have. I think you need to have something to be like, yeah, this was
Yeah.
bad, but it wasn't as
Yeah.
bad as this shit. It was. Uh, and I think perspective is a huge part of it. Life experiences, right? That's something you can refer back to and be like, well, it wasn't as bad as this, and also it's literally a mindset. You have to look, like I said, I grew up with two of the most negative parents. My relationship with money was shit because of these two, because
Yeah.
all they cared about was money. And when I would get it, I'd be
Right.
like, fuck money. I'd be like, let's blow it
Right.
on I'll
Right.
show them, right? And it's like, so my thing was like, I lived that way
Sure.
for X amount of years. I know what I got out of it. Let me try this. Try it.
Sure.
Try it for a month. Try it for a month. Start writing a journal. Keep a journal. Start writing a journal. Thank the universe every day you wake up and every night before you go to bed for the things that you deserve, not what you want. It's not a wish list. You say thank you for family, for health, for love, for this, for that, for wealth, for I'm telling you, I've done the religious thing. I'm not knocking anybody for it. It never moved the needle for me. I can tell you results. I've seen 100% results from
Yeah.
living life this way. And you think about, we only use
Right.
10% of this shit
Right.
in our head, right? Like, I believe manifestation is 100% legit. I believe people can manifest their destiny as long as you do the work. That's all there is to it. It's not a genie lamp. It's not something. There's a great book by a woman named Mel Robbins. It's called The 5-Second Rule. And I used to implement this every day and every night. And just recently I got back into it because I forgot about it. But every night before I go to bed, I would basically set up the next day. I'd be like, tomorrow I'm gonna wake up a killer. I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna be as sharp, as funny as ever. I'm gonna get in that studio tomorrow. I'm gonna make everyone laugh, and I'm gonna show them why I am who I am. And then you count down: five, four, three, two, one, and that's it. That's it. Simple. And I go to bed, and I wake up in the morning, and every morning on that elevator ride up to the 36th floor, I would do the countdown again. And it never failed me. It never failed. It's when things really turned
Yeah.
for me in a positive direction. The impressions started coming out. These are all impressions I did for
Right.
years. Nobody gave a shit. Nobody heard them, and I was never in there with them because of me. Because I'd be sitting there when High Pitch was on the phone, and I'd go, "Why the fuck am I not in there? I do a great High Pitch. Why are they not calling me for Tan Mom?" Because my ego. I was my own worst enemy. I kept myself out of that studio more times than anyone else. And the minute I wiped my hands of it and I said, I don't give a shit if I get in there anymore. That's it. I'm done stressing about it. I'm done worrying about it. Week and a half later, I
I
was in there
wondered
doing
about that, dude,
impressions
because I
out the
was like,
blue.
I wonder how the logistics work. Did Howard come to you or Gary come to you and go, "Hey, Shuli, listen, we've seen you around the office. And we've heard the impressions. We're going to start some new segments, and we'd like you to be a part of them." Like, I've always wondered that. That's really cool to have it like that illumination of how that actually happened. It was you holding you back.
It's literally, it's,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
100%.
remember that fight
100%.
or whatever
You
it
know?
was. It's a Howard manufacturer's fight, I'm sure, about you going to Gary and asking for permission, and you and Gary, and then he brought you into the ring and Gary into the ring, and then played.
Well, that was
Okay,
the moment. That was the moment for me because I was trying so
right.
hard to get into that studio to
What did
showcase
you need?
what I can do.
Did you need Howard to like? He
And
said to you, "Shuli, you're funny. What the fuck do you think? You wouldn't have you here if you weren't funny." Remember, I think it was him or Gary. Like,
no, I absolutely, but you have to understand, like, I grew up
sure,
listening to the show. I was a fan of the show. To have the opportunity to be in there and do a voice
yeah,
and to make him laugh was like that was climbing
yeah,
Mount Everest for me. And it was a position that I was used to because I played to four and
yeah.
five people a night
Right.
for years in Vegas. So I wasn't intimidated by the size, by the
That's
lack of
fair.
audience in the room. It was perfectly in my wheelhouse. The thing is, it usually takes one person in there when they're talking about something to go, "Oh, Shuli does a great
Right.
Tan Mom impression," or whatever, and then it shows up on. But because I would come to Gary whenever he'd be talking about something that I had something attached to it or related to it or could give him info. I would go right to Gary, and I would give Gary this info in the hopes that Gary would be like, "Oh, that's
Right.
really good. Go in there with it." But Gary didn't want anything to do with me at that time. Our relationship was not as
Yeah.
good as it got
Why was
later
that? Was
on.
it because you were in your way?
And I think that I
Yeah.
think they smell it on you, right?
Yeah.
When you
It's like
want it that
Sal.
bad, they
Like,
go,
yeah.
"Don't give it to him. Don't give it to him. He's it's gonna be shtick. It's gonna be bullshit. He's gonna
Right.
come in there trying too hard." At the end of the day, it's the first reality show, so they
Totally.
just want you to be real, right? So I remember that fight starting on the air, and I remember thinking in my head, "Yo, Howard's not gonna take his side. Like Howard's
Yeah.
gonna take my side." And Gary's argument was he comes in here 100 times a day with shit, and I can't listen to all of it. And my point was,
It's your
you're the
fucking job.
producer.
Yeah.
That's your
Yeah.
job is to listen to all of it. And Howard was like, "Hey man, I'd rather him come to you with 100 shitty ideas and one good one than for him to be not wanting to bother you and
Exactly.
not come to you with anything." So Howard took my side, but at the same time, I'm in there fighting, and Gary's calling me names, and I'm like, and that's when the switch flipped in my head. As soon as I walked out of that studio, I literally in my head could hear my voice say, "I don't give a fuck if I'm ever getting in this studio again. I'm done. I'm done. I don't want to fucking deal with this asshole anymore. He's giving me shit for trying to
Yeah.
help the show to try and
Right.
contribute. Like, fuck him, man.
Yeah.
All ego. All ego. Butt hurt, right? I walk out, and a week later, literally, they're like,
It was a tan
I
mom.
think it
Yeah, I
was a
remember
Tan
it.
Mom thing, and they're like, they go, Shuli
Yeah.
does a dead on Tan Mom, and I went in there and I start doing Tan Mom, and then I jump into
Get the
Elephant
drunk.
Boy and High Pitch, and then the next week I'm in
Yep.
there again and again, and now there's puppets being made,
Right.
and everything that I listened to that I wanted to, I would listen to Billy West
Yeah.
work the Jackie puppet, and I'd sit there and I'd go, fuck man, if I could do that, like that would be
Yeah.
a dream come true. And there I was, puppet on my arm, sitting
Yeah.
there doing voices, cracking up the greatest
Like
broadcaster of all
kind of
time.
like a
Like,
court
it
jester,
was
but
amazing.
not. You know what I mean? Like you're making the king laugh.
You
Yeah,
are.
you're
We're
making the
all
king
we're all
laugh.
court jesters. We're all court jesters there. Whether he's laughing at your
Right.
material or at
Make him
you, the
laugh.
goal was if you could get him to laugh, then you can bet people
Yeah.
listening are laughing. It's
It is.
contagious at the end of the day,
Dude, I
right?
remember.
So yes.
It makes me laugh still. I remember you had Howard rolling, and when Howard's rolling, it's infectious through that radio. You're right. When Howard's genuine laugh, not his ha ha laugh, that's fake.
Now the one where his head's
Right,
up and he's
real
like,
laugh. That
ah, and he's just
Yeah,
laughing to the
you're
heaven.
feeling it through the radio, and you were doing Tan Mom and said something, and you did like her downswing, like, "Err," and Howard's fucking.
Oh,
I thought
her
his belly
powering
was gonna
down.
explode. I'm exploding. The two friends I had in the car, we're doubled over, almost crashed my car, and the two of you start riffing about like somebody just took the. You said like. It's like someone just took the batteries out of her, and it was the funniest shit I had ever heard you say up until that point. Because that was like your new thing. It was like, well, to me, Tan Mom, like, he's fucking spot
Well, I
on.
mean, what's wild is, and what's wild in the office, everybody that worked around me in the office knew I did these impressions.
Right.
I would do them all the time. At home, my family was being tortured by me talking
Right.
to them as Jeff the Drunk and as Tan Mom and singing in the shower. As all the whack packers,
funny.
you know, and that was, this is a perfect example of like I literally did it the night before, and then that next morning I'm at work and something came up where Howard's like, yeah, Shuli come in here one second. I want to hear you do this such and such impression. And as I'm walking in my head, I'm going, I should tell him about the song I sang in the shower, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. You know, he loves CSNY. And I was doing, you know, helplessly hoping 5 minutes later
Right.
as many whack
Right.
packers as I could do. And he loved it. And it's not something I
No.
worked out with the producers. It's not something that I rehearsed. I didn't have backing vocals or anything. Like, this was just, again, goes back to Carson, goes back to, you know, Carol Burnett shit, on the fly, in the moment, organic, spontaneous comedy to be able to come up with a line on the spot with my arm up a puppet's ass and make this guy laugh who's heard it all from the best. Like, that was it. You couldn't take
Dude,
shit
you know
away
what's
from me
interesting?
after that.
Zig Ziglar said spontaneity is a conditioned reflex, and that's exactly what you're talking about. You were able to go in that room in that instant because you have been so fucking practiced. You played to that 5-person room.
Yeah, and I would rather
Sure.
fail on my own merits,
Sure.
on my own material, than succeed off of somebody else's, because at the end of the day, look, I appreciate them writing, and they would write great stuff. The writers and stuff, when you're in there with puppets, there's little screens and shit. But at the same time, the stuff that always got
You.
him dying was the stuff that came off the top of my head in that moment, and I love that moment. You know, that's what I live for.
Yeah,
That's
dude,
what comedy
that will
lives.
always
in my opinion.
go down in my Howard Stern. I don't know what you call it. My top memories. One of the darkest is in
Sure.
2006. The people that came in from fuckingmachines.com. Do you remember that? Holy fuck! I was
Sure,
driving
I
a
remember.
truck for my dad, and I was like, I think I should turn this off. And I had like nightmares about it for weeks. I think I should turn this off.
Poor
Right,
Gary
right.
still has nightmares about it. He got squirt in his eyes.
Right? That's
so.
right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was one of the funniest things ever because Gary went from creepy producer of a show to dad mode, where he was like, Why wouldn't you tell me you do that? He's holding his eye. He's going, how could you
Right.
not tell me you squirt? Like he's scolding her in his dad mode. I thought it
Yeah,
was the
dude. Listen,
funniest
at the
thing.
end of the day, for the audience to wrap this thing up, what you're talking about is you let go of an outcome. It wasn't your ego like saying fuck it. You literally were in your ego at that point saying fuck it. However, what was real behind the scenes inside of you was I'm not going to stress this anymore. I'm not going to make this an outcome that I need to seek. If it happens, it happens, and I'm at peace with it. And if it doesn't, I'm at peace with that too.
Yeah, I did it. I got there. I turned a 1 week
Yeah.
audition into 15 years. Like it's all house money at this point, right? And I should have been back home a week after I was there. I've told people, imagine never swinging a bat and then the New
Call
York
you. Yeah.
Yankees draft.
Yeah.
Right? Like
It's
that's
amazing.
insane. That's what happened. I had zero radio experience, and then the Stern Show's like, "Oh, but you know a ton
Right.
of shit about this, so come work with us." And then it was just a matter of, well, how do I stay? How do I
Right.
not go back home? And so that fire that's lit under your ass when
Yeah.
you don't have anything, that can't be duplicated. That can't be substituted by anything else. You literally have to go through it to that's how I got there. I had nothing. I was living with my parents. It's that fire is what kept me calling in every morning with games and questions and impressions and whatever I could think of to get on the air. Maybe I would get a shot. The shot that I believed
So
I could
freaking
get.
awesome, man. Well, look, we're gonna do this again. If you're cool with that, I want to pick right. I want to pick up right
Yeah.
there because that's a perfect place to segue into. Let's do the Howard stuff, and then really what I reached out to you about was the choices you made to leave the show, and really honor yourself and your family, and you can tell your wife again. I appreciate that. I don't even know the story. That's why you're here. I don't even know the story yet, and I know I already appreciate it from you and the choice you made. Yeah.
Yeah, she definitely changed my life, man, and I'm more
Sweet
than
man.
happy to come back on, and we will do it again. And
Thank you
yeah,
for doing
thank you
this,
for
and
having
and
me.
uh, and thanks for letting me bug the shit out of you for a year and not going, hey, fuck off, man.
Oh, it's all good,
It's all
man. I
good.
apologize. I apologize for the
I'm
delays. It's
sure,
been a
man. I'm
wild
sure.
year.
I'm in LA and I'm close to Vegas, and I keep telling my wife like we've got to go up there and see Shuli next time he plays Vegas. So where can people find you? Where are your next dates?
So in March, I have a weekend in Rochester, New York, at
Okay.
Comedy at the Carlson. That's March 10th through the 12th. For tickets, you can go to my website, shalomshuli.com, SHALOMSHULI.com. You can check out my podcast, The Shuli Show. It's available on all platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. And I have a Patreon page if you want to support The Shuli Show at Patreon or Patreon/The Shuli Show. And I do another podcast with some comedian friends of mine called The Miserable Men Show. It's like The View if it was hosted by Neanderthal cavemen who think race and sex jokes are still funny. So it's a trip down old school memory lane. That's only on Patreon for now. And then I have a new podcast coming out, which I think you'll really love. February 7th, my comedy brother, who I started with, James Mattern, in Vegas. He's now one of the best comics in New York, hosts pretty much every comedy club out there. Just won album of the
Nice.
year for an album he put out called The Check Spot, which is just him doing sets during the check drops at
Nice.
comedy clubs, which is the shittiest spot in comedy is the check spot because people are paying their checks and doing math while you're trying to tell jokes. Um, and so him and I started a podcast. It's coming out February 7th. It's called Thanks for Coming Out, a podcast about bombing. And it's me, him, and another comic friend of ours that we rotate guests. And all we do is trade bombing war stories. It just
I
the
love that,
worst
man.
bombing stories you ever heard. This is all we do as comics. We hang out in the green room and we exchange war stories. So now we're doing a show about it. First episode comes out February 7th with Mark Normand, hilarious comic, one of the best writers out there, and has bombed so much on on TV programs for morning news, on everything. Like he's amazing. We have about 10
Nice.
episodes recorded, so we're very excited about that. And it's called Thanks for Coming Out, a podcast about. That was our code phrase, by the way, when we would play in Vegas and I would host and I would bomb for 10 minutes and then I'd bring James out, and as I'm shaking his hand on stage, I would go, "Thanks for coming out." And that was the way he
You're gonna
knew
eat
you're
it.
about to eat a shit sandwich for the next 10 minutes. There's nothing you can do about it. So that's why we
That's
named it
super
Thanks
cool,
for
man. I'm
Coming
excited
Out,
to
a
hear about
podcast
that, dude.
about bombing.
This has been a real pleasure. It's weird when you, like I said to you when I first saw you on my screen. I was like, it's weird to hear somebody and like meet somebody after so long that you've known them, but they've had no clue about you. That's a strange dynamic, and
It's weird to adjust to that as like that's the one thing I learned when I started working there and really appreciated from Howard is how hard it is
yeah,
to be
yeah,
honest on the air. With the amount of it's not hard when nobody's listening.
right,
Because nobody's fucking listening. But when millions of people listen, people will come up to me on the street, they go, "How's your mom doing?" And I
right,
go,
right,
"Who the fuck is this guy?" Asking about my mom. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, they
right.
played a voicemail on my mom," or "How's the baby clothes?" Like people
Yeah,
are in your life.
yeah.
Like that's the thing. You want to be on the air, they're gonna get all up in your shit, and that's just something
Love
you
that,
got to
man.
be
Dude,
ready for.
thank you. Really a lot of gratitude to you for doing this. I'm gonna reach out to you to do this
Likewise.
to do a follow up. I really think there's still so much gold
Yeah.
that we can uncover and give to this audience. And anything we can do to support you, man, we're happy to. So thanks for being here, Shuli. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure, Ian. Thanks for having me, buddy.
Absolutely.
We'll do it
All
again.
right, audience. Thanks for
All
listening.
right,
We
buddy.
appreciate you. Later. Okay. Dude, fuck, man. If I wasn't watching that time, we could have riffed freaking 3 hours. So, dude,
I
that
know.
was that was what I expected and not what I expected at the same time, which is great. Yeah, because
Good.
yeah, it's
Good. I
what I
like that.
expected in terms of your stories and stuff, and not what I expected in terms of the level and depth. Because Howard doesn't feature that stuff, and so we don't know how somebody is running their own life, their ego, their bullshit, their fears, what they're using as far as tools to get themselves through obstacles and on the other side. I like learning about that. I
Yeah.
liked all your tactics here. I think that the audience is going to be really benefit from that.
Yeah, it's simplified, I'm
Right.
not a guru. I'm not sitting here, lecturing people on how they need to live. I'm just saying, look, this shit worked for me. And I swam through the darkest sea of negativity every day for half of my life. So if I can sit here and tell you, hey man, you can make shit happen. It's not a dream. It's something that you literally can Jedi
I
into
love it.
happening, man. And people, it's such an easy concept that I think is why people can't wrap
Yeah.
their minds around it. That's like be a good person, think positively, and expect what you deserve, and it'll start happening. And people are like,
Yeah,
yeah,
thanks
okay,
for that,
yeah, what?
Shuli. Yeah, I am a
Yeah, yeah,
personal
yeah,
development coach. That's what I do for a business and living. And we have this podcast and we've got events and we've got all and like, dude, that I am a full believer. 10 years ago, I was fucking teaching swimming
yeah.
lessons for $10 an hour, sitting in the pool crying in my glass in my goggles, thinking, what the fuck is my life come to? Like, what am I supposed to do here? What am I gonna do? And then my wife said, I think you should become a real estate agent. And I did that. And she's like,
Yeah.
"You hate real estate."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "I know it's just got a lot. It's got such good money." And she's like, "Why don't you pursue coaching like you love coaching?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let me do that." And I started in 2014, and I just ran this like secret business until 2020. The pandemic hit, just like you. And she was like, "Fuck real estate, gas pedal down on coaching. Let's roll." And I started this podcast, and it fucking took off. But I had to follow my
Yeah.
heart. It was scary.
That's
Just had to
great.
follow my heart, you know.
Well, that's why so many people don't
Yeah,
do it because they're scared,
I'd
right?
rather be
And it's
scared though.
like, and once you realize that the fear isn't even real, it's all
Yeah,
attached to the
yeah,
ego, right? Where it's like, what if I fail it? You better fucking fail at this because you're not going to
right,
succeed
right,
if you don't. You know how many comics are fucking amazing the first time ever up on stage?
right.
You can name them all.
Yeah,
That's how few there are. But like even Chappelle, as brilliant as he is, would go out to the fucking park in the street and play to people in the park. That's where
Yeah.
he honed his craft. That's where he sucked at first, right? And it's like, so, it's just you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to drop that ego and say, "Fuck it, if I fail, I fail." You know how many people, Stern fans, are waiting for
Oh
me
yeah.
to fucking fail? And it's like, if I give them any energy, because that give and take,
Yeah.
you're bringing that
Yeah.
back. Whatever you're putting out is coming back, right? From whoever else you're exchanging, cutting negative people
I
out. You got to
completely
do
agree.
that shit, man. So it's like, before I would have fun with these people and I'd argue with them and I'd retweet their negative shit. And now it's like,
Right.
fuck,
Yeah.
you're not in my
Exactly.
life. You're done.
Yeah.
You get one shot. Make it count. Because if I don't give it life, nobody's even gonna
Yeah.
fucking know
Agreed.
you were here. And that is,
Dude,
that's awesome. So it's helped a ton,
this is
man.
great, man. This is gonna be it's gonna be out in a couple weeks. I'll shoot you a text, and my people will. What's your email, by the way? My people. Oh no, I have it. My people will email you.
Yeah, it's
That's right.
Shuli100news at
And then
Gmail. And just send me whatever you want promoted, and I'll share it wherever
yeah,
I can.
will do. Dude, I want to be respectful of your time. Fuck, it's 10:30. Thanks so much for giving us this hour and a half, man. This has been awesome. Really appreciate meeting you, and I look forward to talking to you again and digging in a little deeper.